Illana Burk, CEO of Your Life's Workshop, coach to entrepreneurs and solopreneurs across dozens of industries, and host of Good Business. With nearly 20 years' experience helping hundreds of clients create profitable, ethically driven, and sustainable businesses based on their life's work, I'm here to teach you how to do great work, make great money, and make a positive impact without feeling like you need a shower afterwards. Welcome back to the Good Business Podcast. I am your host, Illana Burk, and today we're talking about credibility. What is it? Why do you need it? And how do you establish it in the age of the internet when you can barely believe anything that anyone says that you find online? Especially with deepfakes and AI and all the rest. Getting harder and harder to know the bullshit from the real stuff. So what does credibility even really mean anymore? This topic came up for me this week because of a funny thing that happened over on TikTok, where, as I have been talking about, I have a fairly new account that is growing relatively quickly, quicker than I actually expected it to. And some dude on there asked me how many businesses I had successfully built and sold. Now, this is a question that I have been getting relatively frequently on TikTok that I actually am glad people are asking, because it means that people actually care about being a little bit more discerning about who they're listening to, because, oh my God, there's just so much bullshit. Like, I'm sorry, when you see somebody who's like 22 and saying that they're like a very experienced business coach, there's literally not enough time for that to be true. So there's a lot of that, a lot of I did it, so can you, a lot of just the, fluffy bullshit. So I'm glad that people are asking about credibility. He did it in a rather confrontational way, like, as anonymous people without profile pictures on TikTok have a tendency to do. And so I explained that I ran a digital agency for over a decade, and we ran 30 to 40 projects a year at its peak, and it was very busy and very thriving. And I made a conscious choice to close it when I decided I wanted to focus more on education and coaching. And instead of selling it, I chose to distribute my client list out to other designers in my community, because that was how I wanted to have that as my exit strategy. That was always my plan. And I still get residuals from some of those. So it was very profitable for me to do it that way over time. And it supported my other community members. So obviously I wrote this in a very concise way, because you only get like a certain number of characters in a TikTok comment. But I was very nice and just explained. And his response was essentially saying well, oh, really? Because there's nothing on your LinkedIn about you owning a digital agency. And so this guy actually took the time to go search for my name on LinkedIn. And he was absolutely correct. It has been basically like a professional parking lot for me for a really long time. It's never been where my clients come from, so I don't spend a lot of time there. And my business has sort of evolved over time. So I guess I just didn't really think of it as if I own this and now I own this. It's it's always just been kind of an evolution. So it essentially looks like I've just been this sort of mushy consultant for a really long time. And it was a really actually good point. I just hadn't seen it that way, because so he just kept pushing and I kept explaining, and then it just escalated, because he was not going to let it go. It was he was basically just saying that nobody should believe a thing that I say. And I'm going, man, you can like what I say or don't. That's, kind of up to you. And then I remembered that the block button existed. And I decided that it was no longer worth my energy and time. So that's how that story ended. But more importantly, I realized since he was right, I have spent the last decade or so essentially preaching to the choir on other platforms, on Facebook, on Instagram. I've never really focused on growing my reach. So the people that I spent my time conversing with and interacting with on social are mostly people I've known for a decade or more. So we have a rapport. My credibility is pretty unassailable with them. We refer to each other. Everybody just kind of knows who I am. I've been around a long time, and I never had to think about that. And I haven't had to think about it for so long that I literally forgot to think about it. So I went over to LinkedIn and I fixed my profile, obviously. And the funny part was that part of me thought the act of putting out more content was essentially the display of my credibility. Like that's kind of why I started being on TikTok was like, look, smart things on display. Here's my credibility for all to see. And that it hadn't really occurred to me that in order for people to actually buy what I'm saying, I also need to establish that I have the right to say it. And that was my blind spot around this. So that's why I'm bringing all this up today, because it made me really think about credibility from as a concept and what it means. And as you grow a business, like how that plays out. So what is credibility at its core? Essentially, it's one crucial piece of our ability to build trust quickly and establish our authority so that we can build things with followers, buyers, clients, and helpers who believe in us, right? It's a way to help people believe in us, to help people buy what we're selling, both logistically and metaphorically, right? For some, building a body of work like books, writing, podcasts, heavy duty social platforms, etc., like that will be their credibility building. That's how they're doing that, is they're building long followings. They are consistently putting out content that says, I know what I'm talking about. Now, for others, it will be a long career full of accomplishment, full of advancement. And for yet another group, it's being chosen in some way by those who already have it, right? The anointed, you get published in a big fancy book publisher, or another leader says, this person's amazing. That's how you get your cred. And sometimes it can happen very quickly. Sometimes it can take a really, really long time. But from the best I can tell, if you're a professional content creator who's trying to really teach, you either need a lot of followers or you need an established and verifiable career behind you that you can talk about in order to be credible right out the gate before you have all those followers. And that's a really hard thing to do for somebody who doesn't have either one, right? That's why building a business is so difficult, especially these days, because credibility can be faked. On one hand, you can build it quickly because you can fake it. You can buy followers. You can do all those things to deceive people. Or you have to do it the hard way, which is slow and painful, if you don't have that like professional cred behind you of, fancy letters after your name. And even that only goes so far. So if you're trying, the other side of that is like, if you're trying to build a career as a business owner who leads, you need a hearty content presence to bolster your ability to be taken seriously and open up opportunities. What I'm talking about is, let's say you're a business owner and, you sell courses and workshops and all kinds of other things, it's not limited to that. But like, then you want to write a book. Well, in order to get the book deal, you need to have a big follower count. So it's like these credibility pieces sort of work in opposite directions depending on what your goal is. So if you're somebody who wants to just be a content creator, you've got to have all the professional cred. But if you're somebody who's a business owner who wants to have new opportunities, then you have to become a content creator. So it just like goes back and forth, but that's the way that content is really fueling credibility, because it's one of the only ways that we can kind of start to trust in individuals, because small business owners, it's like, who's going to take the time to deep fake my face, right? Like, you can kind of believe us still. You can believe individuals on YouTube. Now, whether or not you should is a totally other thing, but you can at least make that discernment because they're in front of you. And that's part of why video has become so important these days, because it's much, much harder to fake with AI than like audio is, frankly. I mean, I've seen podcasts that are done with AI now. Like, how depressing is that? So if you are trying to build something amazing, you have to produce content that's equally amazing. That's kind of where that's where it lands. So the moral of the story is that credibility is not just one thing, and it's not the same thing for everyone. And the needs to build credibility are not the same for everyone, but we can all agree that we need it. So that's where I landed after my story about credibility. And the action steps that you can take is take a look around at your digital footprint and see if you have any blind spots like I did. Having orphaned or parking lot profiles out there could be hurting you more than you realize, because this guy actually took the time to speak up. And it makes me wonder how many people went and looked at my LinkedIn page and didn't say anything, right? And we're just like, wow, she looks like she's full of shit. So I'm actively working on making sure that I don't look like I'm full of shit. I am updating my testimonials. I am getting recommendations that aren't 15 years old, because that was seriously how old my recommendations on LinkedIn were. So it's time to bring everything up to the present so that people can actually see what I do, how I do it, why I know what I'm talking about. So it's time for you to go and do the same. So credibility is something everyone needs, and it's hard to get, but it is something that we all have to pay attention to. We have to establish it, we have to nourish it, and we have to continue to communicate as we grow and change and evolve. Our credibility footprint has to grow and change and evolve with us. All right, that's it for me today, everybody. Have a really wonderful day, and I hope you all are staying safe out there. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. For more information, visit yourlifesworkshop.com.